Yeah. Yeah.
What's that? What's in that picture?
I remember that event right there. That's Sunset High School in 1968.
Uh-huh.
Those were really good kids there. This is me right here.
Uh-huh.
And there was a delay, and I had to talk to these kids. This girl right here, I said to her now, okay, she was highly verbal and so forth, that you need to, we have to kill time here because the press was there already, but Kennedy was coming. And so you have to arrange for a demonstration that's going to last 15 minutes. And so, but there was no point to it particularly. But she said, okay, no problem. And so she went out on the floor and started whipping people into a lather about a demonstration. And pretty soon the whole room was shouting and screaming, and then she had the band kick in, and with that killed like 15 or 20 minutes, and then Kennedy came, and then we could get down to normal business here. But they had to do something for the press, because all sorts of press people were there. And so it was, you had to keep the thing going so that everybody felt that it was a continuous operation. We just didn't have a speaker coming like in a classroom.
Right.
And she was brilliant on this point right here. And especially during these convention periods, great students came forward, able to accomplish impossible things. I mean, you couldn't normally go into a classroom, into a building like that and whip people into a lather, but
yeah.
When you had the right people and the band, and one of these kids was told to go deal with the bands, she was going to get the students whipped into a lather. There was 2 or 3 others doing things, and it was very nice. And it was just the idea of sort of organizing things on the side with the kids doing it. And everybody in the process then learned how conventions operate.
Right. Do you keep in touch with any of these students?
Yeah.
Any of those students?
Yeah.
How? What?
Have luncheons with them.
Yeah. That's good.
This girl here is Karen Wick. Her father taught chemistry at Sunset. This girl here was a great musician, I might add, but she was also a political type. And we use all these people. This is just kind of a cadre of kids that were leadership. The other interesting thing was, one of these kids here, he's not in there, was ultra conservative. His uncle wrote the book The Naked Communist. I can't remember his name now, but he was a believer in his uncle and his parents, who were somewhere to the right of Genghis Khan. And in class, when I had him in the AP class and the convention thing, he was always pushing for the conservative positions, etc. And he was a good student, but about 2/3 of the way through the convention, he was unable to convince the states out on the floor to go for Goldwater. And so he came to me up on the stage just almost in tears, which became in tears in about 10 minutes. And he said, you know, I don't understand that. I mean, I go to all the states talking to them about supporting Goldwater, but nobody will listen. And I felt sorry for the little varmint. And so then I held sessions with all sorts of kids like this, both liberals and conservatives. And I said, you know, okay, the reason is that most of these kids are not that conservative, just like you are. But you have to still keep going and try to do it. Because there'll be some conservatives in every delegation that will follow you and do what you say. And he began to feel better about it. And I said, it's going to be tough because most of the kids are from liberal states. And Goldwater didn't do so well, you know. So
Right.
And you have to just pick the kids that are going to be supporting Goldwater and jerk them aside, and then develop a caucus
Right.
that will back him.
Right.
And so our talk lasted about 40 minutes upon the stage there, and he left in good shape after that. And then went down to try to organize, because I would help anybody, liberal or conservative or for decent candidates or not. And then when he was talking, he got hold of somebody in the Goldwater, in the real world campaign, and said, can't we do anything to get some more support for Goldwater? And so then he and some adult that he got a hold of came to me, and they said, is there anything we can do to, because they realized that I was neutral as far as my actions out there, that we could throw the convention on behalf of Goldwater. And I said, well, you want me to throw the convention, change the vote? And he said, yeah. And I said, God, you're trying to get me killed, aren't you? No, I said, we can't do that. And then not only did they do it, but the Rockefeller people wanted us to do that. They wanted a guarantee that he was going to win. And I said, you know, we can't do things like that. These are two different talks.
Right. This is all in '64, right?
What?
This is in '64.
Yeah. And I was aware of the fact at that point, I mean, I was completely unaware. The thought never occurred to me to throw the convention in favor of Rockefeller or anybody. And they both wanted us to do that. But, you know, I said, look, if word ever got out that we were throwing the convention, it would destroy the whole operation.
Right. Of course.
And we can't do that. Now, the Blaine Whipple, who was the head of the Rockefeller campaign in Oregon, tried to put pressure on us to do that, and I said, Blaine, we just can't do it. It won't be acceptable.
Right.
And he understood that. It was fine. And by the way, I always wondered what happened to him, and I noticed that in the paper about a month ago, he is now living in Hood River.
This is the student.
What?
This is your former student?
No, in charge of the
actual Goldwater person.
Yeah, no, Rockefeller.
Rockefeller.
And so I'm going to drive up there one of these days, yet this summer,
Good.
and talk to him,
Good.
because he was really good. I mean, he's the one that arranged for me to go to the convention in '72
Oh, is that right?
with with the other guy's identification.
That's good.
Anyway, yeah.
I think I had something I wanted to ask you.
Okay, now you are getting close to the time you have to leave.
Yep.
Is this, well, this sort of fits the education thing, this convention, even though we've been talking only about conventions. Oh, the other thing that we haven't mentioned is the entertainment. And there's an organization here in town called Rose City Banjo Players or something.
Yeah.
And we've used them at every convention we've had. And they are really good, but there's about 20 of them, and they play banjos or patriotic music. And so we brought them on, and also the
Boca Marimba Band?
what?
The Boca Marimba Band?
Boca Marimba Band, yeah. And we've used them, and the first time we did this, Susan and I were going for a walk at the park, and we could hear this Boca Marimba music, but it was over the hill, and Susan said, God, that would be good music for the convention. So we went up there, and there was the band playing, etc., just in the park, free of charge. So I went over and talked to them, and I said, could we get you guys to play at our convention? We had the convention coming up in another month or two, and they said, yeah, we'd be happy to do that. And of course, that cost us money, but then we really had good entertainment with the Boca Marimba Band, and they played at every convention we had after that. And so did the Rose City Banjoliers.
Yeah, because I remember there was like this Congo line that would go around the whole Coliseum.
Yeah. That wasn't our doing, that was the kids doing.
Right.
But that was good.
Yeah.
And then we had other acts going on. During the recesses, we had about 3 different places where there was a band playing, so that there's something for the kids to do when they're having lunch.
Right.
And so that worked out really well. And then we of course had our own band there, so, but they were doing their stuff during the convention. And one time we were meeting at Metro, and I can't remember where. I think it was at Sunset in those days. And you know, we had been meeting for a month, and this kid came, boy type, with a friend of his. And when we got down to debates or discussion something, this kid got up and said some things 2 or 3 times, but he spoke with authority, and people listened to what he had to say. And I said to Bill, God, that kid's really good. He was a junior at the time, because this was a year to go before the convention. And I said, he'd be it seems like anyway, a great national chairperson. We hadn't picked him yet. And so Bill talked to the kid, and then I talked to him, and I said, you interested in this? I mean, you know, we explained to him the convention. And he said, yeah, that sounds really good. Well, it turns out that he was an all-state baseball player, shortstop, for Sunset. And so I said, now, there's a problem with this, and that is, you know, this is going to be during the spring, and you're playing baseball. Well, if you have a game and we have a platform meeting or the convention going on, we can't train you for a year and a half and then have you go to a baseball game when you ought to be at the convention.
Right.
And he understood that, so he went to talk to his coach, and he said, you know, I'd like to do this convention thing here, and they want me to do it, and I will do it, he said, but I just want to let you know that if there's a conflict, I'm going to have to stay with the convention. And the coach says, hardly, says, you're an all-state baseball player. You can't not come to a game. He says, okay, well, in that case, I quit. And he was serious. And the coach said, what do you mean you're going to quit? The kid's played for 3 years already. And he said, yeah. I said, this convention thing is really good. And it was a year when we had candidate coming. And so the coach says, look, you can't do that. I mean, it's going to interfere with baseball. He said, nevertheless, he says, I'm not on your team anymore. I quit. Well, that ended that. And the next day, the coach got a hold of him and he said, look, do the convention if you like, but come to us whenever you have a day off.
What year was this? Do you remember?
No, I'll have to look at the schedule. I don't know about that, but he was really a good kid. But he was the grandson of the guy who owns the Forest Grove newspaper and the Valley Times, the Hillsborough paper.
The Pamplin?
What?
Currently, it's the Pamplin Group.
Well, it was those days the Hillsborough paper.
The Argus.
Yeah, the Argus, but it's not. No, not the Argus. There's a Beaverton paper. What's that?
Well, the current Beaverton paper is the Beaverton Valley Times.
That's it. The people that owned that paper and the Forest Grove paper were his grandfather. Was his grandfather. And so I learned a lesson at that point. You know, if you're good enough, any coach that says, okay, well, you got to quit the team and you're that good, they'll buckle.
Yeah, you win a couple of games if you have him on your team.
Yeah. But he was a good athlete. And
Did the coach ever get mad at you?
What?
Did the coach get mad at you?
No, I don't know. I didn't know.
He didn't confront you.
I think I was at Aloha by then. Yeah, I know, it was. So.
You were mentioning Bill Presley.
What?
You were just mentioning Bill Presley. What was your relationship with Bill Presley like?
Oh, it was good. I mean, we're still good friends. But we got along really well together. He wasn't much for organization of things, so I did the organization of the convention. He did the platform, which was a big job because we had platform meetings about every month for a year and a half, something like that. And he had to monitor that, and we had 4 sections of platform meeting all at the same time. And he had to work with all the chair people of that, and it was a big job. So he did good work. Before him, when we were still at Sunset, Merle Cressy did it.
Right.
He took care of platform, and Merle had the southern states. He took care of all 13 southern states, and I had all the rest of the country, the Northeast, the Midwest, and the West. And we each organized our part of it. The part that was good about that is that when he was at Sunset, it was when the southern states were getting frisky, you know, we're gonna do things their way.
With Wallace.
Yeah. And so he was great. I mean, he had those students whipped into a lather so that they were willing to destroy the convention for the good of Wallace. And that worked really well. So, and then the other good thing about it was that when the convention was over, it was in May, you understand, there was only 2-3 weeks left of school. I worked out an essay I wrote in which I challenged Merle to a duel. And I took my classes all into his classes, and I had a pair of gloves, and I walked in, slapped him across the face with the gloves, and read the challenge. You know, we challenge you to baseball game, softball game, at the picnic